Well, let's turn to my colleague Brian to run a bit of an audience interaction here, and I'll take one of the mics and walk around to people who have questions. So over to you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. So I have two Brians. Sorry, that's confusing. So yeah, we want to hear from you. So we want to devote about 15 minutes if there are that many questions. And again, to repeat what Brian McIntosh said earlier, we're hoping for questions that allow our guests to answer your questions. So try to keep it to one question and it be a question. We will have sort of a sum up following this Q&A where we ask what are the next steps that we want to do. What would you like to work on? Have you been inspired to take action in some way? So we'll get to that. But right now, let's open the floor to questions.
With all the cranes in the sky for all these huge developments and the need to adopt other kinds of clean energy and things like that, has there been consideration about when companies come forward to develop these things, they are asked about, can you put in geothermal or things like that to just make sure that they've got those as, they've got the ground dug up anyway, like those are clean options that they could put for a huge building like that, right?
Thank you for the question, Judy. And yes, that's exactly what the Toronto Green Standards is designed to do. So any developer we absolutely expose options, and we have a great example of a geothermal building going up in Etobicoke Lakeshore. Humber College's new student building and theater that's coming online just south of the Lakeshore is actually has a geothermal technology for heating and cooling, and so those are exactly the kinds of things, green roofs and the like, that we highly encourage and provide guidelines to all new builders in the city. Incentivize them. There's a good question. Anybody else want to take that?
We could take another question if you want. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, there we go. They need lots of incentives. Planning, zoning, these types of things are mostly provincial. I mean, we've got a number of programs in place on transportation, housing, green retrofit programs, but on a scale that's not the commercial type of scale that you're talking about, but it's absolutely vital.
Yeah, I want to give one example of it's like geothermal is great, but it's also I think a lot of with renewable energy in particular, a lot of people have like their pet technology that they prefer, and it very is reliant on like circumstance, where you are in the world or where you are in the city. So for example, right now the city is building a new Etobicoke Civic Center where that 6-point spaghetti intersection used to be. And everyone try to go to Westwood. Remember Westwood? Remember how you could only get to Westwood by like going like one of two directions, but if you were coming from like the east, you couldn't. Anyway, I just remember. So all of that's being rebuilt. There's going to be a new Etobicoke Civic Center there, and the city is planning on using deep lake cooling and heating in that space. One of the benefits that we have here in the city of Toronto is that lake, and you were talking about the transportation, but there's also a massive heating and cooling benefit that, like City Hall, for example, and the new well downtown at Wellington and Spadina, and like there's a whole network of buildings are utilizing lake cooling and heating, which is very, very energy efficient and quite green and stuff like that. So it looks like we're spreading that out a little bit. So just to recognize that, like, I think geothermal is important, but it really is dependent on individual processes, right? Like for like my little house in Toronto, it's like it doesn't make sense for me to put in geothermal, but maybe a battery might make sense for me to buy like the ultra super cheap nighttime electricity rate from Toronto Hydro, which is like 2 or 3 cents a kilowatt hour, and then utilize that during the day, right? So it really is. I I just want to recognize that like a lot of people we should be conscientious of the fact that like it should be kind of location to location to location. And I wish it were easier than that. I really do. I've been at this for 20 years. I really wish it were easier than that. But that's not the unfortunate reality of it. So.
Let's have another question here.
Hi there, my name is Paul. This is my wife Beth. My question is for the MPs. We've noticed in terms of our house that if we try to reduce our electricity bill by decreasing our consumption, whether it's by a heat pump or some of the other sources of solar energy, it actually doesn't really change our bill because most of our bill is transmission and infrastructure. So we could use zero energy and have the same bill, almost. So the question is this something that the federal government can actually influence at the provincial level all across? Now, not just in Ontario, but other provinces, to say, okay, you want us individually to act responsibly, but we don't have an incentive to do it.
Thank you.
I mean, so I used to serve at the provincial level, so can sort of understand a little bit about how it works in Ontario, and I sympathize with your concern because I've gone through that myself. And I think as far as doing it across Canada, I'm going to take that back as a suggestion. To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that question. What we can do, I don't think we have the power to require it. Because it is provincial jurisdiction, that would be my answer on that. But in the process of working with the provinces on a whole series of things, like I talked about earlier, so the clean energy grid, and all of that across Canada, maybe this is one of those things that we can add into that hopper of topics that need to be resolved amongst us and help, I don't think it require it, but make it part of the list of priorities for us. So I'll take that back as a suggestion. I don't know, James, if you have to add to that.
So you're saying, you've taken the steps to reduce your energy costs, but your energy costs aren't going down. I mean, we can't mandate that the province, we can't tell them how to set the prices or how to get the utility companies to set the prices. We don't have the jurisdiction to do that. It surprises me a little bit, and I agree with Yvan. I'd like to drill down a little bit on this and find out why that is, because the structure of the program, so the carbon pricing, for example, is designed in a way that if you reduce your energy consumption or transition your energy consumption, your costs go down, you get the rebate. You should be coming up further ahead, but it sounds like you're not. So there's something askew here, and I'd be happy to chat with you more about it and find out why that is. But on the very specific point about can we force the provinces to do anything, we can incentivize them to do things, with a carrot, but we don't have the stick.
Thanks, and I would encourage you to connect after. I had this gentleman here.
I picked up a program midway through yesterday talking about requirements for solar panels on all buildings that were being to be built in the city. And I can't remember what city it was. Everything. Yeah. The other thing is, and I support what James has said, and now I'm showing my age. Back in the 1980s, slowpoke was being considered for, and those are small atomic.
I think it's just feedback.
Is that better?
Go ahead.
Those were small atomic reactors that would be placed on top of larger buildings that would supply all the energy in the north. We all know that in the north relies on fossil fuel, but if they were switched to nuclear, which is, I think, James' point, we would be far better off. What is your comment about more nuclear in the north?
Yeah, thanks for that question. But the greatest example is if you go to the very remote northern communities in Ontario or across the country or smaller communities anywhere in the country, Right now, they're heavily dependent on diesel fuel as a source of energy. You know, you fly it in, you fly it out. It's the only way they can, you know, if you look at mining camps or logging camps. So, you know, there's technology being developed right now around the world, but here in Canada, these small modular reactors. And there's a large handful of Canadian organizations that are working on this technology that are, you know, well down the line. It's not there yet, but it's going to do two things. One, it can take, you know, get rid of this reliance on dirty fuels like diesel. You can, you know, you can power a facility with something about the size of that center area right there, that's clean, that's longer lasting. But it's also a huge economic opportunity because, and this is another important point that should never be lost when we're talking about clean technology. Canada, you know, we hear all the time, oh, Canada's only 1%, what are you bothered for? We're not really the problem. No, we can be more than 1% of the solution. Like, Canada has an opportunity on so many fronts, and this nuclear technology is one. Look, we were continuing to be a world leader on nuclear energy. This is another frontier. And if we get out ahead of this thing, you know, other countries, the big emitters are going to be coming to us with their solutions. So there's a massive potential opportunity there.
Another question over here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. When I was for a while, I served as president of Sierra Club Canada, and I went to visit in Saskatoon. I talked to a bunch of folks who were in, like, most of them were Indigenous, Cree folks, oftentimes, Cree communities, living in and around those communities where the actual uranium and other nuclear stuff is actually being extracted. And the rate at which there are things like cancer and stuff like that was a significant issue up there. We have to recognize that everything that we produce and use comes from somewhere and has to go somewhere else. Nuclear waste lasts longer than any known human language has ever lasted. So the US government at one point literally tried to create some sort of warning system for a society down the future to tell them, hey, this stuff is poisonous. But they had to hire a whole bunch of like cryptologists and mathematicians and poets and things like that, because there's literally no language on planet Earth that has ever lasted as long as nuclear waste, as much nuclear waste will last and will remain poisonous for. So what nuclear energy does is it heats up water to turn a turbine. That's how electricity is created, except for in solar panels. Every other means of producing electricity is just turning a fan. That's it. The wind can do that much cheaper than a nuclear power plant can, and much faster. Water can do that. There's all these other ways as well. So, you know, I totally get that a large chunk of Ontario's electricity comes from nuclear, but I do not believe for 1 second that it should be considered clean. It's considered clean in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, sure, but it's not considered clean in terms of radiation. It's not considered clean in terms of radioactive waste. And as much as people say, hey, we can store this for hundreds of years or whatever, it's still going to be radioactive. And it's for like generations and like civilizations later. By definition, that to me is not sustainable. Because sustainability for me means every generation gets it better, or at least the same as we do. If we keep putting our waste down generations, so that generations later they have to deal with our waste, that to me by definition is not sustainable.
Thank you.
We've got, go ahead.
I respect the opinion, but I disagree with it. If you go down to the Bruce nuclear plant down near Kincardine, you will see 50 years worth of nuclear waste stored in a facility that's about the size of Centennial Arena, those 4 hockey rinks combined. And if you take the instrument that measures radioactivity You can stand beside these storage facilities that have been storing nuclear waste that have been there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and the level of radiation is lower than you'll get walking through some parts of Toronto. There is a lot of myth about nuclear waste, and one of them is how dangerous it is. The second thing is the technology I'm talking about. Some of these small modular reactors, one of them at least, in fact more than one of them, is the technology produces zero dangerous waste. Zero dangerous waste. One of them is even better than that. It uses as a source of fuel existing nuclear waste. So it's a solution, not a problem. So I think people need to be very careful when they talk about this, not rely on old myths and old stereotypes, and they need to understand where we're going as opposed. You watch The Simpsons and you see a open barrel with green slime falling out of it. That's not what nuclear technology is. We should be very proud of this technology in Ontario.
Thanks. I know we're going to have some disagreements. We have another question. We're going to have to draw it to a close, I believe, after this one. Thanks.
Well, this may. First, thank you for doing this again. This has been pretty cool. I'm enjoying it. Tonight is about working together. That was the theme we started with. So I'm going to ask you guys, what would you like from us in Etobicoke, us residents, Etobicoke Centre and Etobicoke Lakeshore? Unfortunately, we don't have Etobicoke North. We'll get there. But yeah, what would you most like, or what do you need from us in order to help move forward in the plans and everything we're trying to accomplish?
Just quick, on the Etobicoke North piece, we have a colleague named Kirsty Duncan who would literally walk over broken glass to be somewhere for something like this if she could, but she has some very significant health problems right now. So don't misunderstand her absence is any way a reflection of not being supportive, because it's breaking her heart not to be here. We can tell you that with 100%. What can you do? Keep doing what you're doing. Keep talking about it. Keep pushing us. Keep pushing your friends. Keep pushing your neighbors. Because we need to get to squeaky wheel, right? Squeaky wheel. Look, you guys can do the math on how old I am. I moved here when I was 11 years old. I gave you the clues earlier. There's been an evolution on support for fighting climate change. People talked about it. People sort of acknowledged it. They're kind of willing to do something about it. Now they are willing to do something about it. How much are they willing to do about it? We've made really big advances in this because the groups like this have been out there, talking about it and pushing people to move on it. Unfortunately, we're at a point now, and it goes back to where I started at the beginning, we're at a point now where there's pushback. We don't want to slide back. We want to keep moving forward. But the only way you can do that is pushing really hard against the people who talk about rolling back some of the steps that have been taken. The accountability legislation that Yvan talked about earlier, it's there, it's law, it requires reports periodically on where we're at and an explanation of why not. So that's something we did, that's a measure we introduced so that, future governments, they would have to proactively introduce legislation and say we don't care anymore, but then they're gonna have to answer to all of you. So just keep up the good work, honestly, just keep talking about it, keep pushing it, keep having meetings like this, keep forcing us here to have these interesting debates.
I know I don't have a mic or anything like that, but just as a person very concerned, our representatives I'm from Alderwood area in South Etobicoke. My representative, Christine Hogarth, is not here. Kinga Surma is not here. I'm really concerned about what I think is the fact that in our province we have an anti-environment government. We have a government that was elected that took out electric charging stations, that tried to make incursions into the green belt, notwithstanding environmental impact, trying to build the 413. I think what we all need to do here is do whatever we can with our family, friends, anything, social media, to try and make people aware that the environment is the key issue and that cannot, again, vote for an anti-environment government in this province. It's very concerning, and it's going to roll back a lot of the things that we've already achieved. It's not going to move us forward.
Brian, I'm going to encourage you to close because we're well past our time, and I want to appreciate people's commitments.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. We do want to talk, briefly about the next steps and encourage you to share with us what you would like to do, what you would like Etobicoke Climate Action and the other two hosting organizations to do here in Etobicoke.
Hold the mic to your mouth. Brian, thank you.
Okay. So I'd like to tell people who don't know that Catherine Hayhoe, who now has a worldwide reputation as a climate scientist, she's from Etobicoke Centre. She went to school here. She's friends with Kirsty Duncan. They went to school together. And her best advice, I think, is to talk to people. That's the most important thing that any of us can do. So the people who aren't here today, your neighbors, your family members, who wouldn't think of coming to something like this because they don't see it as affecting them, it's distant in time or place, it's happening elsewhere. It is happening to us, as we know from the summer forest fires, forcing us to stay indoors for days. So it's going to happen in other ways, in unforeseen ways, and we should be talking about it. So I encourage you to think about that, and to please suggest ways in which we can do new things. What forums like this on other topics, other ways to address this and to engage people of all ages, would you like us to do in the new year? I'm taking 3 workshops in January offered by seniors like me, Seniors for Climate Action Now, and it's called Climate Conversations. It's how to conduct an engaging, conversation with people who are, still learning or just curious or even resistant, how to engage them. And I'm hoping that we can offer it at Yvan Baker's Seniors Advisory Group 1 month in the new year. If we can package that well and make it effective, we could do it to different venues. But I'd also love to be able to have people speaking to youth, to people, in different constituencies, have something focused for them to feel like they're being heard and can make suggestions. So that advice is about broaching the subject with neighbors and family members. I do also want to announce that we just received a small grant to launch something called Etobicoke Greenspiration, and that's to create 20 short videos showcasing individuals here in Etobicoke, or projects, or organizations, or even business who are doing climate-friendly things right here in our neighborhood, in our area, to show that these changes are possible among us and around us, and that we hope that these stories will inspire people, engage people to think about, gee, I could do something like that, or that makes me think of something, entirely new that I'd like to pursue. So we hope it will be a springboard for action in Etobicoke. So we'll be filming them through the year and having launch events in different locations to screen these. They're just going to be 5 minutes long or so, but they'll be easy to share on social media, and we'll have events focused on them. So we're going to do 20 so far. We have more than 20 ideas, but I'm sure that some of you can suggest things that we haven't thought of yet. So the list isn't closed yet, it's not finalized, but we're looking forward to hearing anything more that you have to share. But your ideas about the next steps are really important to us, so please either share them, tonight as we mingle, or we did supply cards, just drop them in the basket about things that you'd like to have happen next. Certainly sign up for our newsletter. That will keep you informed once we formally launch Etobicoke Greenspiration, and continue to hold public events like this. They can be forums, they can be a walking tour through a park to engage you with the environment of Etobicoke, to visit certain places that can teach us things about how to install solar panels. Did you know that you can go to a city service and punch in your address, and it will tell you whether your house or building has the capacity to be effective and efficient using solar power. And they may say, sorry, it won't work where you are. But in other cases, they will tell you and give you information. So there are a lot of interesting services that many of us, are still learning about to enable us to move forward. So I want to thank our 4 wonderful speakers and all of you for coming out tonight. It's been a lot of fun. This is our first in-person event. We've had several online, so it's so much more rewarding to be face-to-face with people where we can talk and get to know each other and hear each other. So we want to continue doing more of this as well as some online things in the future. So thanks again for coming tonight.
Can you remind people, we did record this, and our hope is to post it.
Yes.
We have a network to do so of members of our different groups, but we can get more info if you sign up there, and you get a chance to help us out.
Stay for the snacks too, if you
Yeah,
want.
there's some cookies up there.
So we have a YouTube channel where we'll post it, and through our newsletter and our social media, we will publicize that it's up and live, and you can recommend it to other people who weren't able to make it tonight. Thanks again.